Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Tonight we have a late night insight video. So basically an early impression, for me anyways, on one of my favorite houses of all time, Serge Lutens, Uncle Serge, and today we are going to do a early impression video on Sarrasins. Now, Sarrasins is a release that came out in 2007. And it's actually created by the great Christopher Sheldrake, of course, as many Serge Lutens fragrances are. And the note listing is fairly simple, but it's kind of defined, if you will, as an animalic floral fragrance, okay? So the top is blossoms, which we'll talk a little bit about. The heart is two notes, jasmine and carnation, and the base is musk, which sounds like a very simple fragrance composition. If you take a look at the juice color, you'll realize that this fragrance is warning you a little bit. Almost like, you ever seen some of those frogs from the tropical islands where, you know, they have these different colors, like the red dart frogs that are poisonous, and obviously the colors are saying, hey, I'm poisonous, stay away kind of thing? Well, the color of this juice is warning you that Sarrasins is no regular, ordinary fragrance. It is a extremely potent and animalic jasmine, okay? And so the first time I sprayed it on my skin yesterday, and first of all, I have to say thank you very much to Angie, who very kindly sent me this. You may have heard me shout her out before. On Andrea is her real name, I believe, but she goes by Angie. She was telling me. So Andrea or Angie, thank you very much. So you may have heard shout outs to her before and her generosity. She sent me a couple drops of this very precious juice, and the reason it's precious is because it's actually very hard to come by. You can only buy this in Serge Lutens Bell Jar, which actually, let me show you what the Bell Jars look like, just so you have an idea. I guess I should have been better prepared, but just so you have an idea of what the packaging looks like. This is a Cuir Mauresque Bell Jar, thanks to the great Amouage. But he actually sent me this little bad boy right here earlier in the year as a gift. And I mean, the beauty of the Bell Jar. So imagine this, but with this like purple, almost radioactive purple color juice inside of it with the purple writing on the front. Beautiful, beautiful presentation. Almost angelic, if you will. But this fragrance is anything but angelic. It is, there's a little bit of devil in this fragrance, I'll tell you that. And the very first thing that you will realize when it hits your skin, and I wore it to bed last night, so I only got the first couple hours, because usually when I wear it to bed, I'll spray it on an hour or two before bed, and I don't get much more after that. Today, I got a chance to spray it on right after work, so I've had it on for about 4 hours now, and I'm starting to get more of the dry down. So it's funny, because the very first thing I thought about when this hit my skin is that this is one of the most photorealistic jasmines I've ever smelled, okay? But there's more going on than just jasmine, all right? So I probably wouldn't call it just an out-and-out jasmine soliflor, but once it's settled on my skin, I will tell you that that dirty Indolic side of jasmine starts to really come out in the opening, okay? So the breakdown is tough, because many hardcore frag heads will ask you, is it Jasmine grandiflorum, is it Jasmine sambac? Those are kind of the two main jasmines used in a lot of perfume, in most perfumery. But I think if I recall, there's something like 60 different varieties of jasmine that grow in India alone. So there's many different types of jasmine, but grandiflorum and sambac are the two main ones. I would describe this as opening like a Jasmine sambac, but drying down like Jasmine grandiflorum, if that makes sense. That's kind of the way I would describe the composition. And what I did is I actually put some Jasmine sambac right here. Thanks to Russian Adam, I have some of the actual Jasmine sambac essential oil, if you will. So the opening, and look how black that is. And blackness plays a role in this as well. We'll read a little bit about it. But the actual jasmine essential oil, which is maybe one of the most beautiful floral, and I don't love jasmine like some people love jasmine, but smelling the essential oil like this, high quality essential oil, is absolutely to die for. I mean, it's a little bit more waxy, and we'll talk about some of that later on, but I can tell you that some of the dirty Indolic side of jasmine, Christopher Sheldrake has brought out in Sarrasins. So, and it's funny because I know my buddy Rich Mitch, my brother from another mother across the pond, hates white florals. And one thing that stuck out in my mind intently when it comes to this fragrance is that I remember him saying, I don't like jasmine, but I would definitely own Sarrasins. So that made me really want to smell this for the longest time. And so when I use Rich Mitch as like a litmus test here, because I know he hates white floral. So for him to say he would own a bottle of this says a lot, okay? And so when I first smelled this, I thought, my God, this is like one of the most Indolic, photorealistic jasmine fragrances I've ever smelled. And I actually did a quote-unquote reference video where I picked out different notes and said, hey, these are fragrances that I would say are reference, let's say, jasmine fragrances. So I made 3 iterations. The jasmine was actually in the 3rd iteration of that reference video idea that I did. And my reference jasmine fragrances were Oud de Grande, which is a feel oud fragrance mixed with a very high concentration of Thai oud, but some of the most beautiful jasmine grandiflorum I've ever smelled in my life inside of that fragrance. Reflection Man, which I did a comparison video between Reflection Man and Reflection 45 on the channel. And Opus 9, which I just recently reviewed within the last couple months. That Opus 9 is like even though it's a jasmine fragrance, that has a lot of things like civet and other animalic notes at play. I feel like Christopher Sheldrake with Sarrasins was trying to bring out more, he was almost trying to like tease bits and pieces out of the jasmine itself, if that makes sense. But I easily think that this fragrance could have been on that reference jasmine video that I did, okay? So first and foremost, if you are one of those people in the fragrance community, or just in, let's say you're a fragrance lover in general and you just want to kind of take that next step and start diving deeper and exploring fragrances that have a certain note in it. That was one of my favorite ways to explore perfume. Like, let's say I wanted to dive into labdanum. I would go hunt down labdanum-centric fragrances. So if you're someone that really wants to study and understand jasmine, this is a fragrance I would highly, highly recommend. And it's created by a master, Christopher Sheldrake. I mean, I would put him on the Mount Rushmore of perfumers, okay? So definitely needs to be put on your to sniff list. So let me read you the blurb. The blurb, according to the Serge Lutens website, is very interesting because the quick blurb, if you will, basically says that Sarrasins is a soft, floral, and delicate perfume in Serge Lutens' Flacon collection, which I totally disagree with at calling this soft and delicate. Those are not descriptors I would use for this. Remember, I opened up saying it's got that radiation, dangerous, poison frog color to it. Soft and delicate and tender are not words that I would describe this as. Now, I would say maybe there are features of this fragrance that you could say are soft, and there are, you know, powdery, fluffy elements of the musk that ends up coming through, but I wouldn't describe this fragrance overall as floral and delicate. But that's the opening. That's like the initial line when you pull it up in the Serge Lutens website. 75 mils, which is the only way you can buy this. It doesn't come in the regular kind of Serge Lutens bottles, which now don't look like this anymore. They now look like this. So it doesn't come in these Serge Lutens bottles any longer. The only way you can get Sarrasins is in the bell jar, which is the one that I showed you. So that makes it even more exclusive because those are only sold in certain places, okay? But as you dive into the breakdown from Serge Lutens, the actual description I love, and it's a great descriptor of the scent. So here's what it says. Sarrasins is a nod to the fearsome Saracens who terrorized France in the Middle Ages. Serge Lutens revisits history, the history of words held prisoner in the midst of time, of dangerous liaisons found in fear and desire. Guarding our secrets, this perfume stirs up a storm. Applied at night in a Moorish silence, it barely touches the skin before it starts to resonate. Like a ritual conducted in gilded surroundings, I took white jasmine, contrived to make it as black as a panther, as black as night, which is embodied in this fragrance. Now that is a much better description of how this fragrance, how the personality of this fragrance is to me. And again, I don't own a bottle. I haven't worn it for years. This is just kind of an early impression, but I love doing these videos because it allows me to kind of speak on a fragrance that otherwise I would have no potential to ever discuss because it's hard to come by and you can't own everything, you know? So thank you again to my fragrance god people for making these type of reviews possible. So as I said in the opening, I would describe the first couple hours as much more leaning towards that Jasmine Sambac, as I was discussing earlier. And Jasmine Sambac gives you this very piercing feeling of jasmine. It's like a arrow just cutting through, you know? It gives you this very piercing, fresh feeling of jasmine. Jasmine Sambac was very famously used in many of the vintage masculine fragrances from the past. So if you go look up, Koros or some of those old school masculines, many times if they list jasmine, it's Jasmine Sambac that they're used in here. It has kind of the depth and fullness and rich body of Jasmine grandiflorum, but you don't get kind of the honeyed aspect of Jasmine grandiflorum, at least not in the first couple hours, okay? Later on into the dry down, you will pick up little bits and pieces of Jasmine grandiflorum, which is much more sweeter and honeyed aspect feeling and stuff like that. Some people call Jasmine grandiflorum like the granny jasmine, whereas Jasmine Sambac is more like the masculine leaning jasmine. But it doesn't have all that honeyed sweetness here. So imagine the sweetness was taken out. Remember, black is night, dark is a panther, gliding into night. Those images contrasted against this beautiful white floral is really how Sarrasin should be imagined in your head if you've never smelled it. Now, I think this process of making jasmine black, which is maybe why they colored it purple, I have no clue, maybe why they colored it purple, but how do you make a white flower black? What does it mean to make a white flower black? I think this is a simple fragrance. If you really want me to kind of describe the way that it wears and the way that it breaks down, I think I could do it. But there's complexity all throughout it, okay? It's a chaotic, very complex fragrance is the thing. So even though I could sit here and tell you, okay, the opening is the most indolic when it first hits your skin, and then it seems to kind of blend into the fragrance, and pretty soon you start to get some other florals that start to come in, and in the base you get this musk and all that stuff, the powdery musk, and I could describe it to you. The fragrance is deeper than that description, if that makes sense. That's what you have to keep in mind with this. And that's really one of the reasons why I feel like this could easily be a reference jasmine fragrance for somebody, because it has the depth of smelling, let's say, real jasmine essential oil, which is very, very expensive. Most times you'll smell Jasmine Absolute or something like that. Smelling actual Jasmine Otto is very rare, and you don't usually, I'm very lucky to get a chance to get to smell stuff like this. But Sarrasin has the depth of actual high quality jasmine essential oil, okay? It has that rich thickness of Jasmine grandiflorum and the piercing quality of Jasmine Sambac. But what ends up happening, I think, is that some of these other flowers that Christopher Sheldrake has used in here, and if you made me speculate, I would guess maybe there's some rose, maybe there's some ylang ylang, stuff like that that's just kind of mixed in, lily of the valley, maybe, I don't know, I'm just guessing here, but this is not just a pure jasmine soliflor, okay? It's not just jasmine. There's more going on in Sarrasin. And what they basically call it is blossoms or flower blooms, if you will, which is basically like flower essences or their synthetic reconstruction. And these natural essences are either like steam distilled for essential oils or extraction distilled using some sort of alcohol or something like that from the petals themselves. Or in former times, in the old days, they would make enfleurage, which is a whole cool process in and of itself. But basically, just imagine these olfactory subgroups of different flowers. So imagine white flowers and yellow flowers and rosy smelling flowers and exotic flowers and spicy smelling flowers, which we'll discuss, and anise smelling flowers and all these different kind of subcategories of flowers. And just imagine them kind of being the pedestal that the jasmine is kind of put on top to be presented to you. That is Sarrasin to me. And I think the essences of some of the flowers, like especially the carnation, I actually put some actual Carnation Absolute here, so I could just show you guys while. Look at the color of actual Carnation Absolute. That kind of light green color. Oh, it's beautiful. I really wish more fragrances nowadays would go back to using carnation, but that is the actual Carnation Absolute right there. And carnation is maybe the second biggest player in this fragrance, I think, because it adds just a touch, but just enough for you to kind of pay attention, because the jasmine is on the pedestal. Everything else is propping the jasmine up, okay? So it just adds a touch of this spicy, but also exotic, like green essence that adds to the jasmine, okay? So don't forget, The jasmine is the reference in this scent, okay? So everything that's done by Christopher Sheldrake is done not to take away from it, but to enhance it, almost to turn that white flower black, if you will, okay? And so I disagree with the blurb vehemently, as I've said. I don't get soft, I don't get delicate, I don't get any of that. But the blending by Christopher Sheldrake in here, and by mixing in some of the carnation here and there, it just adds a little bit of spice. So when you smell it, you know, it almost smells like you're smelling like a blended aspect of greens, like, you know, green leaves and green twigs and green stems from the flowers and stuff like that, blended together. And Christopher Sheldrake just kind of put a little bit of spice inside of the blender. And that carnation is one of many of the essences I discussed earlier. Maybe some rose, maybe some geranium, maybe some ylang, maybe some, I don't know, some lily of the valley. I'm just guessing, but just a little bit. And each one is dosed in a way that it's supposed to kind of tease or bring out little qualities of the jasmine here or there. That's really how Sarrasins smells to me. That's the best kind of way that I could describe it. You know, this green soup kind of idea from the carnation teases out qualities of the jasmine that you just wouldn't expect. So it smells as if everything is emanating from the jasmine. The jasmine is the sun, and everything kind of rotates and revolves around it, if you will, okay? So the actual jasmine sambac itself, if you go back to the actual material, because in the opening it really has that piercing quality. This is a fragrance that will pierce you. I mean, you know, this is one of those fragrances that you cannot be inconspicuous wearing this. This is something that just feels like it will just grab everybody when you wear this, okay? But when I smell Jasmine Sambac itself, it almost has this sort of illustrious, waxy smell to it, you know? Like, imagine like candle wax dripping. And you don't really get that aspect of the jasmine in here. From the actual essential oil you do, but here Sarrasins brings out more of the white floral aspect of it. Slightly indolic, okay? Yes, it is indolic. I heard someone once say it's not indolic, and now that I'm smelling it, I'm like, what? But it definitely has indolic features to it, animalic type aspects to it, but it's an interesting way to do it, because you could almost make the case that the indolics in here can come across as leathery, although not leathery in the traditional sense, okay? So if you're thinking of things like, when I say leather, if you instantly think things like Bel Ami or something like that, you will be disappointed if this is what you're looking for. This is nothing like an out-and-out leather fragrance, okay? Remember, the jasmine is the center of the universe here. So, but it just feels like the indolic side of the jasmine here comes across as having this sort of almost like parched, dry, sort of leathery smell, okay? So it's like smelling jasmine petals maybe revolving around this beautiful jasmine accord that Christopher Sheldrake created, okay? But those jasmine petals that are kind of rotating around it, revolving around it, are desiccated and dry and crinkly, you know, and almost leathery in a way. You could make the case that the indolics in here smell slightly fecal, okay? And it's true, there is a connection between indoles in white florals and feces. It's absolutely true. It's been scientifically proven. And some scientists think the reason is because white flowers don't have the color of, let's say, you know, the yellow, the red flowers, who are much more colorful and can attract some of the bees and stuff like that to pollinate it. So they have to have their scent almost overpower everything else. That's why some of these white florals are so, for lack of a better word, piercing. I mean, they just pierce you when you wear it. You could make the sense that it's powdery, although I do think mostly it's that base of white musks that Christopher Sheldrake used. And to be fair, he is a master at using these very soft, supple, powdery, elegant white musks. I'm going to review a white musk fragrance from him called Clair de Musc one day. This is on my list to discuss. But if you're looking for a soft, musky fragrance, I don't think I've ever smelled one that is done better than this. And he uses that kind of knowledge and know-how and experience to create a white, musky, powdery base here, but never does it go into the boring side. You know, if you hear me discuss some of the white musks that Francis Kirkjohn uses, sometimes they're very boring. and lackluster, you know, like they have no shine to them. Here, he uses this gentle, soft white musk in a way that is captivating. I mean, it really captures your attention, but it doesn't overshadow. That's the thing. Nothing overshadows the jasmine. So now some downsides real quick. Some weird quirks, if you will. I don't know if it's just the color of the juice, this radioactive strange purple, but there's this weird kind of inky berry-like smell in this. It's like a weird berry combination that comes through from time to time. It's almost like a mixed berry or like a dark berry, or maybe like a blackberry that you would get in Jubilation 25. You know, there's like this there's this blueberry blackberry thing going on. And I have no clue if that's just my mind playing tricks on me. I have no idea if the color of the juice is affecting what I'm smelling. I have no clue, but I definitely get it, or at least I think I get it. But there's no berry notes listed or anything like that. Now, the big downside for me is I tested this twice. Yesterday before bed for a couple hours, today for now going on 4.5 hours after work, okay? Each time it gave me a headache. Each time it gave me a headache, which sometimes will happen with hard, piercing white florals like this. So for that reason, I would probably say that this is one of the last Serge Lutens I would buy if I was spending my own money on fragrances. There's a lot of other Serge Lutens that are ahead of this, a lot. And so for that reason alone, even though I consider this a reference Jasmine, I would probably put this to the back of my Serge Lutens wish list, okay? And Rich, again, going back to Rich Mitch, because he has so many amazing quotes that I can kind of steal from him here and there, but he said, Serge Lutens to him kind of exists outside of time and space and the normal rules of fragrance collecting. When you're a fragrance collector, you have certain rules, like you won't spend a certain amount, or you won't over this amount of money for a perfume, or you're only looking for these fragrances at this time, right? You're only going to spend your money if this fragrance pops up that's rare and hard to find and that kind of thing, especially when you're into vintage, or especially when you're into like also getting a certain version of a fragrance. Like let's say you want the older bottles from Serge Lutens, right? So you save your money until something pops up and then you buy it. And so even though he is exactly correct, I do think Serge Lutens exists outside of space and time and the normal rules for buying perfumery, because Serge Lutens is just such a special and unique house to me. I don't think I would enjoy wearing Sarrasins as my scent of the day. Like, I don't think I would want to wear this as my scent of the day, believe it or not. Even though it's a reference Jasmine, I still think it would be more a reference for the collection where I could spray it to kind of remind myself of, let's say, what a Jasmine fragrance like this smells like, more than actually want to wear this as my scent of the day, if that makes sense. So because of that, I would say this gets pushed to the back a little bit. And the other thing is, I described it as a simple fragrance sort of composition, and I tried to give you my best breakdown of it just from one or two wears, from a couple wears. But this fragrance, even though it's simple, it's chaotic. That's really the word that I would use for this. There's a chaos surrounding this fragrance, which makes sense because, I mean, it's, you know, it's referenced after the fearsome warlord that terrorized France in the Middle Ages. So it makes sense that there's this chaotic sense to it. It's almost like watching a battle unfold on my skin. You know, it's like the old Mike Tyson quote where he says, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And, you know, that's a beautiful description of Sarrasins, because I think I understand it, and yet I feel like I'll never fully understand it, if that makes sense. Like, there is this part of me that likes it, there's a part of me that dislikes it. There's a part of me that feels like it's simple, but there's a part of me that feels like it's so complex because of how it was created. And that sort of, I'll understand it, but I won't. You know, I'm wise because I know that I'm not wise, kind of thing. That parallel, you know, chasm in kind of your thinking and the way that you think about things really is what I think makes this fragrance. And I could totally see how the person who loves this would love it forever. And it could be like their signature Jasmine scent. For me, it didn't do it for me in that sense. And also the fact that it really gave me a headache. So, which sometimes it just happens. Sometimes very rarely does that happen to me anymore because I've become so used to smelling so many things all day. I'm testing things, but this one got me twice. And so I think this will be one of those where I can reference it. I can, I can say I've reviewed it for the channel, which is really one of the reasons why I love diving into these, to break them down for the channel and give you my 100% honest feeling and stuff like that. But if I were going to hunt out Serge Lutens fragrances, this would be right at the back of my wish list. But I would love to hear your thoughts. I know this can be a very divisive scent. Some people love it, some people hate it. But let me know what you think. Let me know if you agree or disagree with my assessment. Do not forget, August the 10th at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time, the wonderful Liz Moores from Papillon Perfumery will join me for a live stream. We did a beautiful 1,000 video live stream yesterday. I was very, very happy with the turnout, since I didn't give any early warning. I just popped on there after, an hour or so after deciding I would, and we had a 3.5-hour live stream. That was a beautiful celebration with you guys. To everyone who joined, thank you, and to everyone who has made this channel what it is. Very grateful to each and every one of you. I love the learning we have back and forth with each other, and really stuff like this wouldn't be possible without the generosity of the community. So I'm very, very grateful to each and every one of my Ram Frag fam who watches and likes and comments. Blessed to have the subscribers that I have. So thank you very much, everyone. Cheers, guys, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.